Chapter 8 The Crazy Z. 2 days later, Looper was still in pursuit of Simon Lee. She had taken over a booth at the back end of the Crazy Z. It was a good vantage point. She could see the television up over the bar. She could see the front door that swung open to Valencia Street. Better yet, she could see without being seen, and she had hidden her unruly red hair under a black beret. She wasn't much worried about being recognized at first glance, at least not by Simon Lee. She figured out on the first visit that he was jumping out the back window and revving away on his motorcycle. A couple more and she figured out where in the neighborhood he was going. Here, to the Crazy Z, where he probably guessed the scene was too weird for cops to go, with lesbians and gays and straights mixing, but not quite, along the high-polished bar and down the skinny dance floor. Except this was San Francisco after all, and even the cops made the scene. Especially cops. Anyway, she decided to catch him here for a chat. She glanced at her watch. At this moment, Molly from Meter Patrol should be marching up the steps of Simon's building. Looper had asked her friend to knock on the kid's door. Molly had bright red hair, like Looper, and no doubt this would send Simon scurrying. He'd be out his window and on his bike in the next minute or so. If he were running true to form, he should walk through that door sometime in the next few minutes, thinking he'd outwitted the lady cop again. In the meantime, everyone in the bar was watching court TV, like everybody else in the city. This was a break in the action while a no-brained reporter profiled up-and-coming cases. A mother who drowned her children in a car, a man who executed strangers on a train, a wife who cut out her husband's genitals, then fed them to the family dog. At the end of this sentence, up came a story about the Barnes murder, with file footage of a gallery opening last year. Tobin smiling, arm around his buddy Zack, Yvonne in profile, haughty, beautiful. Then to a morgue shot, Zachary Barnes under a blanket, identification tag hanging from his toe. Cut to Cynthia Charleston, Tobin's lawyer, standing on the steps of the Civic Center. "He's not guilty," Charleston said. Charleston was a delicate-faced woman whose features took well to the camera. She dressed in an edgy, almost fashionable way, in straight-cut skirts and loose blouses, her hair cut blunt and tinted just a shade, a perfect auburn. Looper had to testify in another case where Charleston was the defense attorney, and she knew how good the woman was at using the press. In a case like this, she would try to attract as much publicity as possible, all the while screaming that the press made a fair trial impossible. In truth, a fair trial was the last thing on Charleston's mind. She wanted to try the case in public, to stir up issues of race and politics, of class and social animosity. To do it loudly enough so that no potential juror was untouched, and a hung jury was the best verdict you'd ever get. "This is a case of sloppy work by the homicide detective, using poor judgment at the scene, acting rashly," Charleston said.
"Jesus Christ,"
Looper responded. But she should have seen it coming. Police incompetence was the first accusation the defense always made. The DA's office leaped on the scene without thinking. They responded to public pressure before considering all the suspects. Now they realize the evidence is shoddy, but it's been turned into a political issue. They are backed into a corner and have to prosecute. And the person who suffers through all this is James Tobin, an innocent man in jail. Looper was so disgusted she almost missed Simon Lee walking through the door. He stood there, backlit, a dark figure in the light that poured through the open window, and then went over to the bar underneath the television. As he glanced up at the set, Looper placed her hand on his shoulder. He jumped about 15 feet.
Take it easy, honey.
I just came in here for a beer.
My treat. Let's go to the back table.
Simon looked at her without recognition. No, you wouldn't want me. I'm a man, he said. I'm not in drag or anything. I really am a man. Looper shook her head. Despite the tattoos, the greased hair, the leather jacket, the medallion through his nose, in the end, he was nothing but a kid, and this whole thing was over his head. She tightened her grip.
You know me.
Yeah?
Yeah.
She took out her badge.
Inspector Anita Looper, homicide. Why don't we go to the back table and talk? Or would you rather do this downtown?
Can I take my beer?
Sure. Take your beer.
As she guided him to the back, Looper took a last desultory glance at court TV. They had gone back to live coverage. A Cuban euthanasia specialist on trial in Miami. Looper turned her attention to Simon. He was trying to play it cool, but he was shaking as he drank from his glass. Looper figured it wouldn't be long before everything came tumbling from this little boy's mouth. Chapter 9. Simon Says. The cop had almost scared Simon out of his skull when she pulled a badge on him like that. It was the last thing he'd expected. He had to admit, though, when she took him back to the booth, he felt not fright, but relief. At least he wouldn't have to play hide and seek anymore, and this cop didn't seem so bad. He figured he could pretty much run the rosy on her. I'm glad you caught up with me. I've been wanting to tell somebody this stuff. That murder, it's really got me bummed.
You haven't told me anything yet.
What do you want to know?
Let's start with the theft.
He gaped at her. Huh? What theft?
The theft that took place at the art gallery last February.
I don't know anything about that, he said automatically, but he started to sweat.
That's not what your friend Tobin told me. He said you stole the paintings.
Me?
Zack engineered it, but you did the rummy work.
Why would I do something like that?
For the money. Zack paid you.
That's not true.
It's what Tobin told me. I have it on tape if you want to hear.
Simon felt his heart again, all wild in his chest. Tobin never said anything like that, Simon said. The cop was quiet. She just went on looking at him. She had taken off that beret, and her wild red hair seemed to be everywhere. Her mouth was turned up into a smile, like she knew something he didn't know. Tobin was off his rock, trashing in deep water. Simon didn't want to yank the guy's paddle, but he didn't want to go to jail for him either. Just the memory of the Dade County lockup and his gaped-toothed cellmate down there in Crocodile Land, that was enough, almost, to set him talking. You're lying. Tobin wouldn't make up a story like that. He wouldn't do that to me. We're friends.
Let me show you something.
Looper took out a picture of Zachary Barnes, the one the police photographer had taken at the scene. It was a close shot, so you could see the gaping wound to the throat, the ghastly expression on Barnes' face. One eye was open, the other closed, and there was blood everywhere. It wasn't a picture that would be released to the press, but the jurors would see it all right. It was not the most gruesome photo Looper had ever seen, but it seemed to have its effect on young Mr. Simon Lee.
Your friend Tobin held a gun to Mr. Barnes' throat and pulled the trigger. We know that. The evidence tells us that. The fingerprints, the powder burns.
This doesn't have anything to do with me.
You know, Tobin claimed self-defense. Zack tried to kill him, he says, because Tobin had found out the truth about the theft, about Zack's scheme with the insurance. Now maybe that's true and maybe it's not, but I'll tell you this. If Tobin gets off, then we'll charge you with theft. We'll get Tobin to testify against you. He's already agreed.
You can't prove anything, Simon said, close to panic. I never got any money.
A month ago, Simon, you bought yourself that Kawasaki. It's a nice-looking bike, not cheap either. I could find out how you paid for it. Shouldn't be too hard.
She looked at him with sympathy.
Do you want to go to jail, Simon? Or are you going to tell me what the hell happened?
Simon caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror over the bar. He was taken aback, as he sometimes was, by the tattoo he'd gotten some 6 months back. A snake, just below the neckline. It showed more clarity in a tank shirt, like he was wearing now. He felt like that snake was wriggling up his neck, whispering in his ear.
Tobin,
it said.
Save yourself.
So he told her about it. About the Mardi Gras party, the dancing, the lousy food, the Dixie beer. They'd been hungry, he and his friends, unwilling to eat the fake jambalaya and soggy shrimp, hungry and broke. Simon decided to stop by the gallery and borrow some money from petty cash. Barnes let him do that, provided he left an IOU. He had a key to the side door. Tobin had turned off the alarm system the day before, saying that it kept pulling false alarms. He'd seen a light, Simon said, and when he went in, he saw Tobin in the main gallery. He had a razor in his hand, and some of his paintings were on the floor. They'd been cut out of their frames and rolled up. Looper looked happier now.
Did you talk to him?
I tried, but the way he is, he's my boss, and he says, "What the hell are you doing here?" I guess I took him by surprise, and he was pretty shook up, the way I came behind him. Anyway, so I told him I just came by to borrow some money from petty cash. Tobin gave him $20 and told him to keep his mouth shut about what he had seen. They were his paintings, he said, and he could do whatever the hell he wanted with them. Then a few days later, I got a bonus in my pay envelope. Cash. $1,500. I figured it was from both of them. Him and Zack. That they were in on it together and just wanted me to keep shut. For a moment, Looper looked wistful.
I don't suppose you got a receipt for that, or put it in your bank account, and I could find it on a statement.
Simon looked at her blankly. Receipt? The hell, I wasn't gonna put it in no account. I spent it before they could change their minds and ask for it back. Looper sighed, shaking her head.
A detective's life is not a happy one,
she said philosophically.
Did Zack ever mention the theft to you?
No.
Did Tobin ever mention it to you again?
Not exactly.
What do you mean?
Well, when he lost his temper with Ruby that time, after he found the letter Zack had written her, that love letter.
Tobin knew about the letter?
Yeah. Simon didn't want to talk about this anymore, but he knew what he wanted didn't matter. Looper was looking at him with those cop's eyes, and he'd come too far already. I showed it to him. I delivered it to Ruby. Zack asked me to, but I saw Tobin right after I gave it to her and...
Why?
He shrugged uncomfortably. He didn't want to talk about being jealous. I felt bad afterwards, though.
Then what happened?
You're not going to tell Ruby, are you? Simon heard the furtive note in his voice and was disgusted with himself. This cop was leaving him with nothing.
Ruby's the least of your worries. Tell me what happened. What did Tobin say?
He said something like, "That son of a bitch. First the paintings, now he goes after Ruby." Then Tobin stomped up the stairs and started wailing on her. He smacked her around pretty good, I think. Looper stood up.
Come on,
she said.
I want to get this on tape.
Simon hesitated. What if I don't cooperate?
Then I beat the shit out of you.
Looper smiled as she said it, like it was a joke. But then she came over and took him by the arm. She had a strong grip, he thought, and she held him like she would break his arm if he tried to get away. He bet that she could do it. She put him in the back of the cop car, inside that iron cage, and he was already thinking ahead to that gray room where they would interrogate him with the tape machine spinning, and how that snake would be all the way up inside his throat for sure, spitting out the words, betraying anybody and everyone, including Simon himself. Anything not to spend a night inside a cage like this.